But what I'm going to do is, at this point, we're going to allow the audience to ask questions if they like, and if you don't have any questions, we have some preset questions for our panelists. So at this point, if you have a question, I would invite you to stand up to the mic and
I have a question. I know the PEDO funding is running out next March, and I'm wondering if there's any idea of what's going to happen after March, and if that would affect the cost and recurring fee of the different EMRs.
I used to work with PEDO building.
Bruce, do you want to answer? So Bruce is the physician lead for PEDO, and we're very happy to have him here today.
I'll just take over from Terry. That's a really good question that there isn't yet a definitive answer to, and it all depends on what's going to happen with the PMA negotiations. So what's happened right now is that the PEDO funding was dependent on an agreement between the Ministry of Health and BCNA to create PEDO, and that runs out as of March 31st, 2014. So if nothing happens and everybody sits back and just lets things go, and nobody negotiates for it, then there will be no further PEDO funding after March 31st, 2014. If the negotiators decide that this is a priority and that they negotiate for it, then funding may continue if money's allocated to it from the PMA, and if BCNA decides that that's the way that they want to use their money and not some other way. So it's a bit of a tricky question, and it'll depend on what the Ministry of Health and the BCMA decide in the negotiations, and partly decide on what the BCMA negotiators, there's a thing called the Physicians Services Committee, how they decide to allocate the money off to the different areas. So the answer is we don't know, and it depends on negotiations.
thank you. Patricia?
Thank you. I'm wondering if you can comment from on the panel on how interactive with patients the different EMRs are. Can you send encrypted emails to patients? Can they look into their own charts and look and see what the results were or what prescriptions they have? I'd like to know that about each of the EMRs.
Want to take that?
So in terms of patients looking at their own labs, they can't get access to their labs directly into the EMR in your clinic. That's secure and private, just like a paper chart would be. They can access their own labs on My Health, which is something that they could set up separately. There's lots of opportunity, I think, to use the EMR depending on the setup of the computer. And I guess one of the benefits to laptops versus desktops sometimes, the way there is you can easily bring the EMR, the computer over and show patients. Like for example, when I was talking about graphs, or some of the EMRs have the Framingham scores that you can calculate right there, or they have, for example, with the sleepiness scale score where the patient can fill it out right in the EMR and it gets pasted into the EMR. So in those ways it can be interactive, but they can't access it outside.
Kristen?
I was just going to say, I don't actually know much about it myself, but I know that the My Oscar is developing a program that's going to be, it's separate from the actual charts, and I'm going to be able to see the charts, but they're going to have access to some amounts of their information. I don't know exactly, and also there's going to be secure ways to message back and forth between the patients and the offices. And so I certainly encourage you to go on the Oscar Canada website and want more info on that.
So I actually think that there's the other EMRs are all working on patient portals as well. So it would be a bit presumptuous to say that one EMR has actually something that is working right at present, but they are all working on it. And I think that that's a question that you need to ask the vendor. However, if you ask the vendor about that, they will promise you, yes, we have it, yes, we have it, yes, we have it. And then when you actually get there, they'll say, well, it's under development. So that's really the truth. I have not yet seen an EMR.
Yeah. So they actually have a working prototype in one or two of the EMRs. However, you nailed it. The working prototype is a beauty, and everybody's going to have it the next month in the next version. So a working one that works in beautifully, that has no problems. You're right.
Just like that, the EMR I'm using, we have 80% of the patients subscribed to the portal,
Yeah.
and it's working for a few hundred patients. So,
Yeah.
there is something that works.
I'm very new to this, and I'm just coming to see that information, and I have a concern about hearing stories about doctors completing their medical records well after all the patients have left for the day. And I'd like to know if you can complete in your patient encounter your billing and all of your notes, and move on to the next patient, leave at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and not do any work after that.
I can comment to that. So as a locum, I've worked in both paper and EMR systems. So I think once you are familiar through EMR, you can be as efficient as you were with paper. There are some things about paper that I find are easier, but I think overall, as I said, once you know your EMR, you can get out at 6. You can review all your labs. I think it's a way of, you have to be willing to change how you do things, and I think you have to, if let's say you're not a great typer, maybe you have to dictate the notes. Okay, I know for some people it is a concern. For me, typing is pretty quick, so it's not an issue for me. I find I can write my notes faster than paper because I can type faster. But I think I can, if it's a busy clinic, I'm familiar with the EMR. Yeah, I can do what people can do efficiently on paper with the same amount of time.
I guess we'll just have a quick comment. I think definitely the transition to a new system is going to be.
And I think that what you also find is that you may choose to do some things outside of office hours. And so again, you have to look at, can I do these things at home, on a computer at home? And some people think they go home and they're never going to work. Most people here are workaholics, I can tell you. And I would be very surprised if no one ever looked at any chart at home. And so again, EMRs are going to give you that ability. In fact, for myself, I've actually found myself being able to go away more often. Because you know what? I don't come back to a huge stack of charts on my desk. I take 15 or 20 minutes, log on when we're in Paris, and looked at my labs and stuff, sent some notes to my staff, and then when I came home, there was nothing on my desk. So now I feel like I can go away anywhere in the world, and I don't need to come home to a desk full of stuff. Good question?
Do the different EMRs come with their specific dictation program? Because I was under the impression that Wolf works with a specific dictation versus Profile works more with Dragon. Is that correct? Or
there are vendors, just about every EMR can work with Dragon. And it's just a matter of optimizing your Dragon so it works with your EMR. But I would say that
it's not specific?
no. It can be optimized though.
No, but what I mean is there's multiple dictation companies or softwares, right? And so do they all work with any EMR?
They should, but I suppose it's the same thing as Nuance, which makes all the Dragon products. they're like the 500-pound gorilla, and everyone else are just little bit players. And so some people have comfort going with the big player, and some people have a little bit more comfort because they're more techy and they prefer a smaller solution. So I got to tell you, I'm not so advanced that I can reprogram my voice dictation to what I want. So it's just easier. Really, I'm there to do medicine. I'm not there to program the computer.
I was going to ask you about the interoperability of one EMR person. Let's say you start on one and then you change where you work, or you know, and you want to transfer of the data that you've collected on patients. Can you answer?
So I don't think this panel is actually powered to answer that question. Probably there are some people in the room who are. There are a number of physicians who are involved in EMR to EMR interoperability projects right now. And so they will be at the stations, and if you ask them, they will tell you. But that's again something that you might want to ask tonight as you circulate around.
And I can add to that. There's one of the principles in the PEDO program was to have an EMR to EMR conversion standard or specification that would support that type of data exchange or chart transfer. And we didn't have one for the vast majority of the last 5 to 6 years. But there is one now. PEDO did sponsor the development of a very robust, complete data transfer specification. And they are funding the vendors in BC to actually build and support that specification. And that work's underway, and a number of them are testing and validating that they can do this, and if they can demonstrate it, then they get reimbursed. So it's the capability is coming, and very practical steps are being made to make it happen.
It is not there for every EMR. If you don't ask, you're not going to find out. So they need to conform to the EMR to EMR spec, and so it takes work, it takes money, and so that's something important. If you think that you're going to purchase an EMR and they do not conform to the EMR to EMR spec, you are locked in forever unless they at some point in the future conform to that. So that's just something to be aware of. You have another question?
I could.
Yes.
Well, I was going to ask about if you want to use the EMR for self-audit, for education, how to improve your practice, getting select data and so on your care. You mentioned the charts you can do to show patients and so on, maybe for yourself. But what's your feeling about the different EMRs specifically that would allow that type of learning and audit to improve practice?
Do you mean like searching by diagnosis, et cetera? Is that what you're getting
Yeah,
at?
and just doing self-audits, getting how far money into my database, how many languages,
So I was just playing around with one of the EMR systems, Oscar, and just to see what I could do in terms of, let's say, finding all my patients with atrial fibrillation. There are search parameters that you can put into that specific EMR. I just played with that one, and you can bring up if you entered atrial fibrillation correctly in the field, in the past medical history field, it will pull up all your patients with atrial fibrillation. I haven't played around too much with it because I don't have my own clinic yet, but I think in the future that would be something that I'd be interested in doing. But I know there are other EMRs out there that can also do these types of searches. So I think if specifically you maybe just want to ask the demonstrators, look, have you tried that with your system? how easy but is it? But that function definitely is out there for quality improvement. You just have to show me how easy is it.
Well, I know that you can do that to them.
It's a pretty simple thing for an EMR to do, and I can tell you that all the EMRs that I know have the capability of doing it. It's just a question of how elegant is their search engine, and how restrictive or how open is it. What can you search for? Are you restricted to a couple of different types of searches, or can you search virtually anything? So that's the difference.
If you were in the market to buy a car, somebody could tell you if you're going to go out of country, you should get an SUV. If you have a big family, you should get a stationary or you want performance. Can somebody tell us, who are about to make a choice as far as simplicity, reliability, the big parameters, which one leads which way? That would be what I would be looking for.
I think it depends where you want to drive this car.
I was just thinking, I think the most frustrating thing I've found with EMR overall when I'm locoming is it doesn't really matter what EMR you actually have, but if your internet or whoever does the connections in your office doesn't do a good job, no matter what EMR you have, it's really, really frustrating. And if you come into the clinic and your internet doesn't work, you can't see any of your patients because you can't access your charts. So I would just say, I know this just makes it even harder, but no matter what EMR you choose, you got to make sure whoever's providing your internet and computer connections, even to the printer, does a good job for you. Otherwise, it's really frustrating.
I think if you want to talk to us afterwards individually, we can kind of give you the off the book opinion if you want to, or we're open to that.
So I'm going to ask Jennifer actually to just go over a couple of the slides that you have in your package as well, because there's some things that, again, understanding what your EMR will or can do, it may be important in how you choose your EMR.
Great, thanks. So these slides are from a presentation I did a couple of weeks ago to an IMIT technology committee comprised of multiple physicians from around BC. And there's a couple slides that Terry had asked me to touch on. And if you want to take a look at the one that shows the sort of the vision of an integrated care team, a couple of years after we got the PEDO program going and a number of our electronic health record sort of systems projects were coming to fruition, we figured that we needed to start to think about where are we going next with EMRs. And we did a fair amount of consultation with stakeholders around the province and inside the ministry and health authorities. And we came up with a vision. Most people were conveyed that very close to the same thing of physicians being part of an integrated care team and with robust EMRs, able to work effectively with care providers in multiple locations, exchanging a variety of information. And it's not just between family physicians and specialists, exchanging referral-related information, or with emergency department physicians, key information about discharge, care plans, and maybe access to medication histories. But public health and being able to exchange information with public health nurses, and patients are getting a fair amount of care in those locations, home and community care as well. And so, and obviously patients as well being part of the care team and wanting to have access to their physicians a little more effectively than what they have in a paper-based world, and the ability to schedule appointments and access some of their patient information as well. So with that, as sort of recognizing this is where we want to go, if you look at one of the other slides that talks about future phases, we certainly realize we're not going to get there all in one day or 1 year or even 2 years. That there is a fair amount of process in a physician's office that would benefit from being automated and with electronic information exchange and interoperability. That needs to be kind of broken down and looked at, and like what makes sense to do now and what makes sense to do later. And so we sort of see ourselves as we have come from a paper environment, and for the last 5-6 years we've been laying the EMR foundation and have, I'm not certain the exact figures, it's maybe around 75% of physicians now have an EMR of some type. In terms of interoperability and integration, we're sort of in a 2-year period where we want EMRs to connect to existing systems that the province has available, which do offer a lot of value to physicians, but also lay the foundation for more sophisticated type of integration and interoperability. And then in sort of phases 3 and 4, we see the next thing is to try to support physicians in their delivery of care to patients with complex conditions and generally chronic disease, support chronic disease prevention and management. And there's a variety of data exchange and interoperability and integration that we see would be valuable to deliver to physicians to support those patients, and then over time make that available to the general population. There's more detail about this in the slides. We don't have all the time to go through that, but I want to point out that these building blocks that we're working on right now are to allow physicians and their staff to access patient demographic data in the provincial client registry, and if they don't have a PHN, to acquire a PHN, and to also upload more accurate demographic information about their patients to the client's registry as well. So it's two-way flow of information, and as Oliver rightly pointed out, this is more sophisticated, more complicated type of integration than we've had in the past. And this also is a building block. You need a PHN to get a prescription or to prescribe, and so that supports access to PharmaNet and allows you to download and retain in your EMR discrete medication information that is stored in PharmaNet, and also the ability to upload samples that you might have dispensed and prescriptions that you've written, so that participating pharmacies can go to PharmaNet and retrieve those electronic prescriptions and dispense against them, and that information will then appear back in your EMR. So really supporting fairly, I guess from your perspective, very basic workflow. Everybody prescribes, everybody needs to register patients, but the information we're getting from the early adopters is that there's a fair amount of value in doing what we're doing right now, and it also lays the foundation for more complex type of integration, dealing around with shared care plans and things of that nature.
And that means they need to be connected to HIO.
That kind of, exactly, that interaction with the provincial systems is happening through the HIO.
Shirley, I think were you going to ask a question?
Very simple question, but with regards to lack of number of crashes and speed of use of the different EMRs, does it make a difference if it's hardwired versus wireless?
I can speak to that because our office has both. It depends on where your office is. So our office is 601 West Broadway. Vancouver Coastal is right above us. There are 132 hotspots within radio distance of our office. So wireless can be difficult unless you have a good tech person. So right now all of our exam rooms are hardwired in. However, my office, I have both hardwired, but I go wireless. So We had some difficulties, but I think it comes down to having the right tech person to do it. And wired is always, it's just a little bit more secure. So if you can hardwire, it's preferable. But even more important is having a good stable connection. That doesn't necessarily mean your EMR, that means TELUS. That's important. And having a big screen, because we're all becoming presbyopic.
Sorry, Terry. So the issue with regard to HILE and the various EMRs actually ever being able to integrate with HILE. I understand there may be some difficulties in terms of one of the systems anyway that's available because it's not going to be tied in the way it should be from a privacy standard point of view. They never were part of PETA to begin with, but it's huge, and a lot of people want to go with freeware if you like. But could somebody comment please on the future as to whether or not they see OSCAR being able to integrate with HILE?
Do you want me to take this one? I think the short answer is the opportunity to integrate to the HILE and to do e-prescribing and to access lab results is available to every EMR, and we are strongly encouraging and hopeful that every EMR vendor will do this work. And the ministry has been working with the BCMA to support funding to make this available, and there's pan-Canadian sort of groups like Canada Health Employee, which you may have heard of, that are making funding available for this. So absolutely, there are no restrictions on who can do this type of integration, but there are rules to do this, and it is not an overnight thing for an EMR vendor to do it, and they need a fair amount of capacity, not just in their application, but within their own resources and staff to do this and to maintain these types of interfaces. But absolutely, this is possible for OSCAR to make the jump, and I'm certainly hoping that they will.
Can I also just say that in BC, while they're not tied in right now, that was somewhat a decision they made because they didn't really want to. They have the capability of it, and in fact in Ontario they are tied into their system and they upload their data there for the chronic disease management. So it has the capability, but it was a conscious decision because of privacy concerns to not do it at this time.
Hi, my name is Gerald. Can I ask just a quick question? Listen, we're down to the 12th hour here. Peter's running out, so let's stop beating around the bush. We're here tonight to try and make decisions about choosing EMRs, not about the interconnectability and the future vision and how well it will flow in our offices. So, yeah, I appreciate ask the vendor. Asking a vendor is like asking a drug rep, which is the best R. Tell me about your R. Let's hear from some of the users, the 4 up there that are users 5. What, in a nutshell, your best qualities of one EMR and your worst qualities of one EMR. And if each of you could share a pearl of one of the best, one of the worst, and be specific what you like about them, because you work with different ones. And you don't have to give us the whole beef about all of them, but just one pearl, 2 pearls, one negative, one positive from all of you. You're up there, put your marker down and give us some advice.
I think all of us have very strong opinions on all of this. We'd be happy to talk to you, but I believe we've been trying to keep this panel part of it relatively neutral and not be naming too many names. And the reality is that none of us have used all of these platforms. So we're all a bit hesitant to say this is the best one because, I haven't used some of the other ones. One pro, con of
good, bad.
Okay, so what have I used?
You can ask these to the demonstrators too, because they actually use the product, so they may be able to answer that a little bit more easily.
So you want us to go, you want us to go through each of them that we've used, and one pro and one con? Okay.
Okay, let's start off with Oscar. The thing I like most about Oscar, it's really intuitive. Everything's on one page. You want prescriptions, you click prescriptions, you got it. No going from screen to screen. It's all there. I think it's one of the simplest ones and easy to use. What I don't like about Oscar, I think aesthetically, I think it used some upgrades. That's not a huge deal to me, but that may be a concern for some people. IntraHealth, thing I like most about it is the keyboard shortcuts. I don't like to do a lot of clicking because I find that slows me down. But I find the IntraHealth that you can actually, once you learn the shortcuts, it can speed up making an encounter note. Thing I don't like about IntraHealth, it's a bit, I think, compartmentalized for me. What I'm alluding to is, if I want to enter something in their past medical history, I have to do maybe 2 or 3 clicks before I get to the right place. And compared to another EMR, maybe it's easier. So I think it was a bit, it could be a bit compartmentalized. I didn't like that. For me, Wolf, again, that's the one that I had least experience in, but I guess what I liked about it, I liked the billing interface. I thought that was very easy. You had all your patients, and you can kind of go through at the end of the day and bill the patient. I thought that was fairly simple. What I didn't like about Wolf was I think that was the most compartmentalized EMR that I worked with, and it took me a while to start to get up and start using it.
Okay. So I'll start off with Wolf. One of the features that I really like on Wolf, and the thing that I think does better than the other EMRs as far as my experience, is the way you can manage INRs. So on Wolf, they have a really great tool where you can see the graphic representation of the INRs along with the doses, as long as you're inputting it correctly. And then you can also click on a separate tab that specifically each week or every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks says whether or not you changed the dose and what dose you changed to, or if you kept the dose the same. And it's just really quick to see what's been going on in the last year. And I think it does it better than any of the other EMRs where you have to go next into the labs and look at it. One of the things I don't like about Wolf is you can't, Kristen was alluding to being able to scroll through all the different encounters, just kind of clicking through and see what's going on. Each encounter you have to open up separately. So that's one of the things that's challenging. That being said, all the encounters, if you put it, are coded by the diagnosis. So if you're looking for a particular encounter and you've coded it properly, it's not that hard to go with. You kind of have a sense of where that might have been. But if you wanted to see what's happened in the last 3 visits, you have to open them up individually. Profile. I actually find profile, just for me, and this is why it is really hard, because I don't find it as compartmentalized, and I find all of the different options are all listed in one column, and I find it pretty easy to use. I like how you can scroll through the labs and documents and search through them quite easily for me. Sorry, yeah, IntraHealth. One of the things I don't like, I don't like the way the initial, the look of the patient profile page, and I still haven't been as efficient in trying to update that. I think all the past medical histories look written really small, and I just don't think it looks I don't get as good of a sense of the patient when I look at it. Oscar, one of the things what was I thinking about Oscar? I don't have as much experience with Oscar. I just aesthetically, I don't like it as much, and I don't find some of the templates like the CPX form or I've had some troubles with using, so all the EMRs have like an antenatal form or a CPX form. I found I've had trouble with my information getting lost when I typed it in, and maybe that was just that one encounter that I had, so I'm not sure that's always a problem. But with Oscar, again, I like how you can just scroll through all the encounters. And I guess one other thing I don't think you can do with Oscar is when you type in the blood pressure, a lot of other EMRs, you can double click and see a whole list, and I don't know if you can actually do that with Oscar. Or maybe the people over here can correct me.
You just have to put it in the right place.
Oh, okay.
I just haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, so I just comment on Oscar. So the thing I like about Oscar is that the INR form looks like the INR form you currently use, and so when you open it up, you just kind of, it's just like the way you would write it on a piece of paper. The things I find frustrating about Oscar is that the way that the labs are in there is like, say a patient's like, oh, I'm pretty sure I checked my prolactin 8 months ago. So basically all you get are the dates of the labs, but you have no idea what's ordered in them. So you're like clicking each single one. Whereas in IntraHealth Profile, when you scroll down the labs that have been ordered in the last, say, 2 years, you can really quickly see what was ordered with each lab. So I think that saves me a lot of time. Also, IntraHealth, another con about Oscar is when I make referrals, I find it really frustrating to attach labs and documents to it because the way, somehow the ones I've used, they don't label them easily, so you can't see, you have to click them to see exactly what's in the attachment. But Oscar overall is very easy to use in general. MedAccess, I like MedAccess mostly because it's very pretty. There's lots of colors, and at the end of the day, when you're staring at the screen every single day, it's kind of nice to have something that looks nice. It's got nice little icons. The other thing I appreciate about MedAccess is that you can set yourself sort of like reminders for each patient. So say, for example, I have this patient who comes back with the CT chest with a big nodule, and it says you have to remember to do the CT follow-up in 3 months. So you could program a reminder to yourself to pop up on that date, 3 months, when you get into your office. Oh, here are the list of things you must do today, and then you can go back into that patient's chart. Whereas Oscar is kind of like the other way. So you put the reminder in the patient's chart, but if you don't open the patient's chart, you may not remember on that day. The final thing about IntraHealth Profile that I like is that, so Oscar has a toilet paper roll, meaning it's kind of like flipping through your chart really fast to see why they were here the last 5 times. But it looks okay. Like with IntraHealth Profile, they kind of bold the heading, and so does MedAccess in a way. They bold the heading of why that patient was here. URTI, UTI, leg pain. So you can go through quite reasonably fast, not as fast as flipping through a paper chart, but it's helpful if you can't remember why that patient has been here before.
Thanks, Jim. Now, we do have to admit there are some limitations to this panel. 3 of our... We're running out of time. I just want to say that we're not pretending to know everything about every EMR. In fact, tonight we could not find the demonstrator for Osler. They are one of the PEDO EMRs. So unfortunately, no one here on the panel has even seen Osler, and that's why they didn't come. Only one of our panelists have worked with MedAccess. So a lot of the comments you're comparing 3. So you just need to understand when you're gathering information, where the information is coming from.